Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to East Central Missouri and the world, and welcome to the James Strong Show podcast number 155. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for making us a part of your day. I appreciate it. This podcast was recorded on the morning of Saturday, January the 11th, from the James Strong Show studio in Western St. Charles County. My essay for today kind of piggybacks, kind of, on the podcast from last week. I interviewed Jerome Koenigsfeld, who was an adventurer, and once upon a time in his younger days had traveled the world, and one of the most interesting journeys that he took was a caravan to deliver cars from Germany to Tehran, Iran, back in the 1960s during the time of the Shah. And when I first asked Jerome to do this podcast, this was before the whole Qasem Soleimani killing, okay? So Iran kind of came into the news big time after we had agreed to do this interview and before we actually did the interview. So we touched on it, but we really didn't build on it. And I will say that reaction from the listeners was very positive on the interview. They enjoyed listening to Jerome talk about his adventures, but I got a lot of feedback saying, well, hey, all this stuff going on in Iran, and you're just talking about some guy driving through bomb-ravaged parts of the world and then into Iran, and you're not going to talk about Soleimani's murder or killing or the death of Soleimani, however you want to categorize that. Okay, well, I'm going to do that this week. And my essay this week is going to be The Policeman of the World. We've been called that for many, many years, all my life, basically. We're going to look into that. Are we the policemen of the world? Why are we the policemen of the world, especially in the Near East, Middle East, whatever you want to call it? So we're going to go into that in detail on the essay today. Before that, though, hang on, let me take a sip of my coffee. I have a unique blend of coffee this time. I have my standard freshly ground Colombian roast Arabica beans. But I ran out of that, so I had to blend that in with a Seattle's Best Portside blend. So that's, I guess I have about 85% Colombian, 15% Seattle's Best Portside blend. But it's a good coffee. Quite tasty indeed. It's keeping my mind up and about. And it did while I wrote this podcast, this essay. So we're going to talk about that. But before we do, a couple of things, talking about the difference between hype and reality. Much of this essay is going to touch on that as well. And as I like to do, as you frequent listeners to the podcast know, is I tend to like to link the introduction stories into the essays, okay? And we have hype and reality. What is hype? What is reality? And hype, I guess, for those of you in the Midwest, especially those of you in the St. Louis area, especially those of you in the St. Louis area or St. Louis Cardinal fans, I'll explain to you the definition of hype. And you could have this as a picture of it in the dictionary. Earlier this week, the St. Louis Cardinals traded outfielder Randy Arozarena and outfielder Jose Martinez to the Tampa Bay Rays for a pitching prospect, Matt Librador. And this pitching prospect he's going to be a good one. He's going to be fantastic, or at least we think he is. Everybody thinks he is. Everybody in the sports media thinks he is. And, of course, they're never wrong. But this guy is a left-handed phenom. He's going to be very good, but he's 20 years old, so probably a couple of years away from that. That's the reality. However, the hype was, why? Because the Cardinals now have this guy. They're going to go ahead and go to the Colorado Rockies and trade for arguably, in some people's opinion, the best fielding third baseman of all time. In some people's opinion, the best third baseman that's ever played the game of baseball, Nolan Ariano. Now, he's just signed a big contract with the Colorado Rockies, but the Colorado Rockies were bad last year, and they've done nothing to improve their team. So word on the street is that they're tanking, and they'll probably get rid of Nolan Arenado for some prospects. That's 100% hype. This is sports talk. This is people who have nothing better to do. If your job is to cover baseball and nobody's playing baseball, what are you going to do? Probably make shit up, which is what they're doing, which is fine because it's baseball, it's sports, and no harm, no foul, right? That's the biggest hype that's going around in the area, in the St. Louis area anyway, right now, at least in the sports arena of the St. Louis area. Now, the reality that's going along and this is just not in the St. Louis area or the Midwest or the country. This is worldwide, okay? And it has to do with the whole Windows 7, Windows 10 window that's going to close on, is it January 14th, 15th? Sometime early to mid next week, okay? Microsoft for years has said, look, y'all better update to Windows 10 because we're not supporting Windows 7 anymore, okay? Which is not a big deal unless you have it on the internet. In other words, if you have Windows 7, Microsoft will no longer patch the flaws in Windows 7. In other words, as those patches become evident to hackers, hackers will be able to get into your system and do whatever they want. Hold it ransom, steal it, whatever they want to do. Look through your camera and watch you doing your thing, whatever they want to do, because it's not patched, okay? Now, many will say, well, Strong, if somebody wants to get into your stuff, they're going to get into it anyway, which is true, okay? But nobody is going to get into the average Joe's stuff if it's properly patched and properly secured. Okay, nobody's going to do that. It's kind of like if you're a drug addict and you're looking to get some quick money, you're going to walk through the neighborhood and look at the unlocked cars. Okay, if you find an unlocked car, you're going to go into it, take the stuff, and then close the door. You're not going to break out a window. Okay, you're going to go into the unlocked car first because that's the path of least resistance. That's the easiest way. Why am I even bringing this up? I am not a computer expert. By far, I am a computer user, and that's a computer user with a small u, okay? I am an operator. I am not a great operator. In fact, I don't know if I'm really even that good of an operator. I have to read a whole bunch of stuff before I do things. That being said, I rely on smart people smarter than me, and I take their advice. That's kind of what I do with things I don't understand. Computers is one of them. And I will tell you that the lion's share, virtually all the smart people who I have personally spoken to or read articles about have said, son, if you've got Windows 7 on the internet after January the 14th, you are going to get hacked. So I opened up my wallet. I bought a whole bunch of stuff, and I have outfitted the studio with new Windows 10 type equipment. I kept a lot of the Windows 7 equipment too, but I kept the Windows 7 offline. I needed Windows 7 to run my my audio software. My Adobe Audition will not make the transition from Windows 7 to Windows 10. I wasn't going to pay a ton of money for new software that will adapt to Windows 10. Bottom line is I could buy a new computer system for a lot less than buying the new software. So I did that. So I opened up my wallet, spent a bunch of money, and I updated. So when the hammer falls, when the window closes, so to speak, on Windows 7, I will be ready. My advice for you, because this is reality, not hype, please, please, please do the same thing. I have had people say, well, if you've got some third-party software out there, that'll protect it. You know what? It kind of will, maybe, some of the time. My opinion is, who knows Microsoft better than Microsoft? The answer is nobody, okay? And Microsoft says we're not supporting it. So, advice from the strong man. Don't run Windows 7 on the internet, please, after the January 14th. You're just looking for trouble. And again, that's my opinion based in fact. One more sip of coffee. You know, that's really good. It would have been perfect if I had a little bit of half and half for that coffee, but But I didn't, so I don't. Okay? My essay today, The Policeman of the World. And as I do quite often on Saturday mornings, I got up at dark 30 and did a whole lot of research on this essay. And there's a lot of opinion that's in this essay, my opinion, and I do separate the opinion from fact. And my opinion is always based on fact. As I always say, please don't take my word for anything that I'm going to tell you. Jot it down, take a note. In fact, that's a good thing about a podcast. Rewind it, play it again, take the notes, and see if the strong man is wrong. If I am wrong, please call it to my attention via jamesstrongshow.com. I have had people do that before. I will tell you. And you may think I'm a very pompous ass for saying this, and maybe you're right. But I will say that people have called me on things in the past. Probably 90% of the time when they've called me on it, they've been mistaken. And as a gentleman, I explained to them, no, you're wrong because of this, but thank you for sharing. Every now and then, they said, hey, check this out because I think you're wrong. And after checking it out, you know what? My source was mistaken. And the sources they pointed me to after research was correct. In other words, it was an opinion based in fact, but the place I got the fact maybe wasn't the most factual. Bottom line is, this is an essay with opinion based in fact. And those sources I use for facts, Politico.com, Britannica.com, Fox News, NationOnline.org, GoArmy.com, Slate.com, The Guardian, and OpenDoorsUSA.com, and the BBC.com. Lots of sources, folks. I did a whole lot of reading today before I wrote this essay. The Policeman of the World. I'll make a statement to start. The United States is the policeman of the world. Quite often in cooperation with NATO, okay? But what is NATO? North American, or what is it? Is it North American Treaty Alliance? No. I can't even think of it. But an acronym is for NATO. Basically, it's us and Europe and Canada and a whole bunch of North Atlantic. Thank you. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO. Okay. But who funds most of NATO? The same people who fund most of the UN, the U.S. So sure, it's a group, but a group head by us. NAFTA, North American Free Trade Alliance, United States, Canada, Mexico. But who writes the rules? The United States, because we're the big dog in the room, okay? The Monroe Doctrine. Legally, if we don't like something that's going on in the Americas, North, Central, or South, we can just step in and change it. By our Constitution, if we don't like what's going on in Venezuela, we can throw Maduro out and put Guaido in if we want to. But we haven't. Okay, but the Monroe Doctrine is another reason why we are the policemen of the world, at least this hemisphere. The U.S. dollar is world currency. Okay, everything is traded in U.S. dollars, and that's good for me because when I do business worldwide, we always quote in U.S. dollars. I don't have to quote in Turkish lira or euro or British pound sterling or Japanese yen or Chinese RMB. Everybody deals in U.S. dollars. In fact, quite often, if you've got a country, let's say somebody from Azerbaijan is buying a product from Australia, they trade in U.S. dollars because that's the common currency. For those of you conspiracy theorist naysayers who say, well, the U.S. currency is just a fiat currency. Friends, all currency is a fiat currency. Gold included, diamonds included. It's all fiat currency because if tomorrow everybody decides that the U.S. dollar is worthless, it's worthless. Same thing with gold. And diamonds are the biggest one. What would happen if a virus broke out tomorrow in the minds of every woman in the world, and all of a sudden, diamonds just repulsed them? What would happen to the price of diamonds? In other words, diamonds are only valuable because women like to watch them sparkle. That's the only reason. So don't give me this fiat currency baloney because all currencies are fiat currencies. Okay, let me get back to the essay.